Now, guys, I want to take you straight to the front page of The Australian. This is big news. Well, there's three big yarns, but the first one I want to get to is this push to oust the Treasurer in Queensland, Jackie Trad, from her role. Push to oust Treasurer Trad over fears of election defeat. Queensland's Deputy Premier and Treasurer Jackie Trad is staring down pressure from within Labor ranks to resign from the leadership team amid fears she could cost the Palaszczuk government power at this year's state election. The divisive leader of Queensland Labor's dominant left faction is refusing to budge, despite facing the danger of losing her inner-city seat of South Brisbane and growing angst among Labor backbenchers about their prospects at the October 31 poll. Ms Trad, who engulfed the second-term government in an integrity crisis last year over her failure to declare an investment property, is relying on union support, particularly that of United Voice boss and Labor power broker Gary Bullock, to stay in cabinet. Now, Ollie Peterson, and Caleb Bond, I'm going to give you guys a very, very quick history lesson here. This woman was without question the most powerful woman, the most powerful person in Queensland up until the integrity crisis, when she bought the place at the Gabba, when she was the minister responsible for the Cross River Rail. It was within the precinct of the Cross River Rail. The CCC came back and said, the Crime and Corruption Commission came back and said, this is not on. We haven't got the legislative teeth or the prosecution teeth to deal with this, but we are going to recommend that in future, if this happens in future, the politician would go to jail. Now, she's been emasculated. And of course, Palaszczuk's ratings, her popularity, has declined significantly off the back of this crisis. This particular story says that her personal popularity in the regions is about on par with Clive Palmer. Doesn't get much lower, but she's digging in. It'll be interesting, Ollie, to see what happens in coming days, because clearly her support base has deteriorated. And if she's just relying on the unions to stay there, it's going to be a long 8 or 9 months for the Labor Party in this state.
And you'd have to imagine as well, Gleeson, the fact that this sort of information is now on the front page of the Australian newspaper tomorrow. It's there for a very specific reason, to put that pressure on Jackie Trad's shoulders and ask her to really do the honourable and only thing on behalf of the Labor Party in Queensland, and that is to resign. When you've got to go, you've got to go. She's clearly got an issue with realising that she needs to go, and there will be, no doubt, lots and lots of pressure within the Labor Party now to encourage her to move on. If this is going to plunge Anastasia Palaszczuk into opposition, if this means that Labor is going to lose the election, and the polls, by the looks of it, Gleeson, indicate that is the case, then there may have to be some casualties on the way. And I don't think that anybody sitting in any pub in Queensland or in any lounge room tonight, or anywhere else in Australia for that matter, who looks at the facts and what was discovered by the CCC can say that this really cuts the mustard. Jackie Trad should no longer be a politician. She should really do the only thing that is available to her and make way for another candidate for the Labor Party, and give her boss, Anastasia Palaszczuk, and the Labor Party there in Queensland every opportunity of winning the next election.
The irony here, Caleb, is she only won her inner city seat last time round off the back of Liberal preferences. They put the Greens last. And in fact, it was ironic that she got across the line on the back of Liberal preferences. The other thing here, guys, is that before May 18, secure, she thought, in the knowledge that Bill Shorten would be Prime Minister, she told Central Queensland miners to re-skill, that coal wasn't the way of the future. And there's actually a story on the front page of tomorrow's Australian which says that Queensland's finances are in a parlous state, and we're spending more than what's coming in, despite the fact that they get $5.2 billion a year in coal royalties. What would we do without coal, Caleb Bond?
Queensland without coal would be in a hell of a lot of trouble. And that is why your state so roundly rejected the Labor Party at the federal election, because they know what is good for them. They know that without coal and without industry and without mining, that state would be in so much trouble. When Bob Brown came through with his cavalcade, they told him to bugger off, and they did exactly the same to Bill Shorten when he tried to tell them that their jobs were worth nothing. And Jackie Trad, as you say, echoed the same message. And I think you have to admit, she has to admit, that to the Labor Party in Queensland, she is toxic. She doesn't wash regionally, and she doesn't wash anywhere, I don't think, because people look at her and the integrity stuff that she went through. I mean, with that investment property, some of that stuff is really just beyond belief. You know, you can accept that people make mistakes, but that is some kind of gargantuan mistake. And when you have a corruption commission saying if someone else did this when there were laws to deal with these things, they would be in jail, that is damning. But we know that Trad has trouble with coming to terms with what she causes, the trouble she causes to the Labor Party, because in the midst of that investigation, she would not stand aside and continued as acting Premier. Now, in any other circumstance, if someone was being investigated for something they had possibly done wrong, they would be stood down pending the investigation. But she wouldn't do that, and I don't think she's going to resign from the front bench because, once again, she doesn't understand the damage she's doing to the Labor Party. Palaszczuk, I think, for the most part, was seen as a reasonably safe pair of hands. Trad came in and wrecked it for her, and if she doesn't get that, and if she doesn't get that she could plunge her government into opposition at the next election, then God help them all.
Well, and her power base has been completely eroded. I mean, as I said, 6-9 months ago, before the integrity crisis, even before the federal election, she was without question. She called the shots. She called the shots in Cabinet. She called the shots in caucus because the left dominated both. But it's interesting, when Anastasia Palaszczuk, just before Christmas, took to Cabinet the proposal to whether or not Queensland would bid for the 2032 Olympic Games, my understanding is that Trad opposed it. Palaszczuk said, I'm not leaving this Cabinet meeting until we've passed the resolution that we bid for the 2032 Olympics. That would not have happened, prior to the integrity crisis. Trad is pugnacious, she's a fighter, she's a street fighter. She plays it tough, but it's going to be very, very difficult for her to survive this.